Afternoon and welcome to Canada's Ocean Supercluster's Climate Solutions Call. Today we're talking about ocean climate solutions and the proposal that we are the call for proposals that we are launching. Next slide. My name is Jennifer and I'm the Chief Growth and Investment Officer, and I'm coming to you today from all across Canada, our entire team, but I am based in Halifax. Oh my goodness, I'm tripping on words today for some reason, which is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Like I mentioned, we're going to have an entire team from the Ocean Supercluster that's joining you. And our overall introduction today is I'll walk you through a bit around the program overview and selection criteria. We'll also talk about the intellectual property and data elements of this. It's really important. I'll touch on a couple of things around how we can support you on sharing your intellectual property as well as your data with others that might turn into commercial ventures for you or just opportunities for you to share to help others grow. Jakob will also join me and share about the membership of the Ocean Supercluster. Danielle will walk you through the financial and budget requirements. And then Ralph is going to share with you around our diversity, equity, and inclusion framework and the things that we're looking to support you and engage with you on. And last but not least, around Q&A. Please feel free to submit a question on the right-hand side at any point in time. Plus, we'll have an open Q&A session later on, and we'll answer a bunch of those questions. Next slide. The Ocean Supercluster. So I feel like many of you are familiar with us. We tend to see a lot of people who come back to learn more about our latest calls. But for those of you who are brand new or want to continue to know more, the Ocean Supercluster has been around for 5.5 years. We are in our current second mandate. Our goal right now is to very much grow all of Canada's Ocean Supercluster. We do this by partnering with over 600 members, and we have supported over 95 projects with a value of over $420 million. We are very focused as well on SMEs. So as you see, 100% of our projects included an SME partner. So those SMEs are the folks that we're really here to drive and support and help grow Canada's ocean sector. Around and heard us talk about Ambition 2035. It is one of our passion topics. Our goal is to drive Canada's Ocean Supercluster to be 5 times bigger than it was a few years ago. With that, we know energy is going to be a major contributor, but on top of that as well, we have general technology, seafood, transportation, tourism, and recreation. And any of these topics are of interest to us to invest in you and your projects. Today, we're specifically talking about the ocean climate solutions, but feel free to reach out. We have a core program open for any of these topics and are willing to engage and want to work with you. Our strategic pillar for our 2.0 series, we have a 5-year mandate at this point in time, and we're 6 months into it. And we really want to grow ocean companies. And that's why we're here today, to support you. In addition, though, we focus on talent. We'd like to drive talent, make sure that you have the talent you need in the future. And as we really grow our ocean economy, you have others who can work in that area. Community engagement is super important. We are a member-based organization. Supporting you on advocating and engaging and introducing you to others is really part of what we do. And then the Global Ocean brand. I just met with a group from Belgium today earlier, and there's a group that's coming to Halifax from France as well this week. And part of what we're trying to do is drive relationships and growth and economic opportunities across jurisdictions, including things like sharing access to data, shared investment, and other types of initiatives that can ensure that Canada is a leader in the ocean economy. Next slide. In our 2.0 phase, we're focused on 4 key areas. So the last one on the slide, of course, is what our call is about today. We have already had an ocean call. Sustainable seafood and transportation are also really important. But the Ocean Climate Solutions call is very broad. And on the next slide, we'll touch on what that actual call is. The framework for the Ocean Climate Solutions call is around greening our economy through innovation that helps mitigate climate change. Please have a look at the guidelines that are on the call website, because it will investigate a bunch of the areas that we're really interested in. There's 4 of them listed here around responsible carbon capture, renewal and sequestration, carbon monitoring, ocean acidification, and trying to identify steps and tools and systems that can help reduce, eliminate, or alleviate any of these stresses on our environment. Bioresources, so things around algae, aquaculture, seaweed, things that are not your traditional sustainable aquaculture elements, but are focused on carbon capture and the long-term sustainability of our climate. The ocean observation pieces are really important too. So robotics and sensing platforms that are focused on understanding the overall solutions that can help understand our climate. And then anything, of course, around innovative financing, insurance, and marketplaces that can help us understand some of those technologies. Further on into the document as well, you'll see some other pieces that talk about coastal adaptation and human adaptation and resiliency. So there's a broad range here. We haven't tried to make a very narrow framework. When we were creating this call, we were working with our colleagues at the Ocean Frontier Institute to really understand some of the elements of carbon that they're focused on. And so we're trying to ensure that we provide some kind of a partnership and support to bring together those thematic type initiatives. So one of the things that's really important to us too is thinking about how you can partner with others. So during this program, we are going to offer opportunities to bring together you as well as researchers who might be researching the topics that you're interested in. It's not a requirement for you to bring forward another organization like an academic research institution, but we have a lot of dollars in Canada invested in understanding climate solutions. And so we want to do our best to ensure you have the chance to take advantage of meeting others who are interested in that as a research topic, because it might help both of you in the long run to work together. Next slide. The actual call in and of itself. So similar to all of our other programs, there's an expression of interest phase that also then moves into a proposal phase. So the key important piece of a takeaway, if you're interested in this call, is your expressions of interest are due December 6th at 8 p.m. Atlantic or 4 p.m. Pacific. You can figure out the math of the rest of them across the country. All of the documents that are required for you to submit are on the call website, but essentially it's 2 documents. It's a Word document that you complete, which is about the call itself. And so what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, who you're going to do it with. And then there's a separate Excel budget template, and you need to send both of those. We do have an email address, climate@oceansupercluster.ca. Send this, any emails, any questions that you have, whenever you're submitting any kind of documents yourself, if you're submitting the EOI, this is the place for you to go to reach out and touch us for the climate call in and of itself. If it says late November, it's late December. If applicants will be notified in late December about whether or not they're successful. But what happens is you get invited to the actual proposal. The proposal itself, the template, the documents, and these things will be submitted January 4th. We're trying to avoid the overall close down that a lot of organizations tend to have over the holiday period. And then that submission will go until February 23rd. So that hopefully gives a bit of a good solid window between January 4th and February 23rd to complete that proposal. We do recommend that you take some time to review some of the FAQs and the proposal guidelines. We've now done a number of calls in our phase 2, including the artificial intelligence call. We had an energy call, and we've also had a joint call with Innovate UK. And we tend to get a lot of questions back that are answered in the FAQ guidelines. So just to save you some time and wait for our response, we try to get back to you very quickly. But if we don't, a lot of the times the questions you have might have already been answered in those guidelines in the FAQ. Here we have our participants and our collaborators. Whenever you're engaging with us in a call or a project, there has to be a minimum of 2 investing members. There's a list here of who those members are. But those members can come to the table and work with you without investing financially or in kind. They can collaborate. And so we're very flexible in terms of how they work with you, and we engage you to encourage you to engage with as many as possible. But the thing that's really important here is there has to be at least 2 of those organizations that meet the definition of industry member that are participating in your project. Anyone can be the lead. It doesn't matter who the lead is. It could be the larger organization, the smaller one. It's whoever it wants to take the time to complete documentation and be the lead contact back and forth with us. But on the flip side, we have association members, and those associate members are things like not-for-profits, federal crown corps, post-secondary institutions. We get a lot of questions about whether or not a college or a university can have researchers that come to the table as a signatory to the contract and are investing members. Unfortunately, we cannot have their funds count towards the project in and of itself, but we strongly encourage them to collaborate with you because it's very valuable for your projects and valuable for all of us to have great collaboration. So the big reminder is, according to that top line, there has to be at least 2 organizations that are investing members that come forward, but we welcome as many parties as you'd like to join you on this overall initiative. The ones on the top are the ones who actually sign a contract, and that's why it's really important that they're the ones who are committed to the project financially, as well as with their own internal resources and other systems that they have in place. The overall process. The lead applicant needs to submit the EOI. We do encourage that all applicants, so whether you're another company, so maybe there's two SMEs coming together and one is taking the role as the lead, it's encouraged that everyone completes the EOI together so that they know what they're submitting. All of these get evaluated by an evaluation committee. So we have external individuals who come and review, who are experts in their area, and do not have any conflicts with any of the proposals that are brought forward. And they evaluate and they give us feedback and information around what can be improved, or maybe what could be improved in an alternative project that isn't part of the stream. So if your proposal or EOI, is unsuccessful, we'll have a conversation, share with you about what we could do to adjust it. And maybe it will come through as a core program, something we could support through a different type of project. If you are successful and invited onto the proposal, we'll give you some feedback as well that will help answer some questions the assessors might have had. Projects must have a start date of June 30th, 2024, and the end date must be by October 31st, 2026. Okay, the call process. We have some dates here, and it's really important to remember December 6th is when your EOI is due. We then have our assessors that come and evaluate, and this is an opportunity for feedback. Whether you're successful or not, you're then invited to a proposal if that's the case. Once again, they get assessed, and then you're invited for some feedback. If the project is successful going through both of these phases, both the proposal as well as the EOI, it will be ratified by our board, and then we move into a contracting. I'm very happy to say that we've advanced our contracting process. In the last round of contracting that we did, it was completed in around 3 weeks. So we are doing everything we can to ensure that as someone's going through the proposal stage and moving forward, you get a chance to review any kind of materials like a contract. And we take a lot of the documentation that was originally in your proposal and put that into the contract. So we're seeing a lot faster turnaround. In the guidelines, we've been sharing a list of all of the materials that go into the proposal. And we do this for full transparency, because some of the things that might have held up contracting in the past have been some of the challenges that you see in that list of first documents at the top. Elements around financial disclosures and due diligence we're requiring at the proposal stage. And the reason why we're sharing this is because we want to make sure that anyone who's taking time to fill out an EOI knows what has to go into a proposal. We want to make sure you're making an informed decision on the kind of engagements you have with us, and also ensure that you understand some of those sign-offs. That when you are successful in a project and you've contracted and it's underway, that submissions are required every quarter, that expenses are required, or reimbursements, submitted claims are required every quarter. And so it's just a bit of detail around some of the process to make sure that you understand what it's like to work with us. We try to do everything we can to support you, and it's making sure you know what you're going to walk into with a project. Next slide. Really quickly, we're going to touch on the project selection criteria. Slide. The overall breakdown is relative. It's approximately 25% of what we're looking at for each of these categories. Obviously, greening the economy through climate innovations is important to us. This is the overall piece of why you're doing this, but we can never lose sight of why you're doing this, or what you're doing is because why. So we need to know that there's a business case, there's a commercial outcome, that you have some long-term sustainable growth for whatever product or solution you're developing. That it kind of makes sense in the long run to invest in this project with you, because there is a really good solid business case about what's going on out there, who your competitors are, what other kinds of products there are, what the marketplace looks like, who's going to purchase your product. The collaboration is also important. Who's coming to the table? Have you ever worked together before? Who has skills and expertise in what? How do we know that you're the organization that can do this? Tell us more about how you're working together and what kind of impact you have. The other piece around impact is really important around DEI. So Ralph's going to touch on it in a bit, but we really want to know what kind of impact you have to the ecosystem overall, and very specific communities and groups that might not have the same representation they have in other parts of the organizations or other parts of other sectors. And then the last part, of course, is the budget and the plan. So making sure that your budget makes sense. Does the plan make sense? Are the goals achievable? Have you set the right timelines and KPIs for all of your parts of this project? If you have work packages laid out, does the budget make sense? Is there too much or too little allocated to those pieces? So it's really putting some good solid thought into some of these. While the EOI is still high level, make sure that you've put some reasonable thought into some of these pieces so that when assessors are coming through and evaluating, they have a good idea that you understand what you're talking about. We want to make sure that they can see your idea and say, okay, this looks like it's achievable based on what they have. Let's give them time to go and really flesh this out and put more detail behind it. Intellectual property and data is becoming increasingly important for us here at the Ocean Supercluster. Part of our mandate as we work with ISED through the Government of Canada, where we received RN funding that we invest non-dilutively into you, is the development of intellectual property that comes out of the work that you do. And so it's really important to think about your IP rationale and what you're building out as an organization. While this isn't touched on in the EOI, this is something that's really important later on in the proposal phase. And so Shafiq on our team is our director of intellectual property. He supports companies on understanding where do they need to apply this? How can they document it? What are opportunities for them to capitalize on the IP? What is the IP they're actually developing in the first place? So part of what we're going through is supporting you on understanding your own IP. What makes you unique as a company is your IP. But not just your IP in terms of systems and processes and products and patents, but your data is also really important. And so we also have been driving and working towards supporting you on better understanding how you can collect and use your data. And so there's two things that we've created with the Ocean Supercluster. So we have had an intellectual property registry going for a while where companies, when they wrap up projects, go and enter in their IP. And so we've registered it because maybe it's something that's really of value to another company to know that you have a machine learning model on fish, or you have lots of satellite images of kelp labeled. This could be of value to others. You don't need to share commercial outcomes or commercial details or commercially sensitive details, but sharing information around what you've created is really valuable. Those examples are data specific. And a lot of times what we see in our IP registry are data specific things that companies have created. And so we've also are creating a data registry. So as you work on developing a project, you're going to have data that gets produced. This might turn into a commercial opportunity for you, or it might turn into an opportunity for another organization to be able to use your data and create something net new. And so you're essentially supporting the development of the ecosystem. So like I mentioned, Shafiq is always happy to engage and support you in better understanding your own IP. There's lots of programs out there that do that as well. And he can share with you a number of them that exist to make sure that you're well positioned to be able to complete all of your own details for what IP you're creating in a proposal, so it's well documented and it's clear, but at the same time, explore opportunities for you to take advantage of it. This little summary is an example of what we have in our IP registry. And so there's a non-confidential description that companies fill out around what IP they've created. It's only available to the members that have access to our portal, but it's the reminder of a couple of things. One, somebody might find really interesting IP you created, and they're going to become a buyer of it. And two, it helps us explain to government and others at a high level some of the fascinating, great work that you're doing that get created as a result of the investments we're all collectively making in your products and services. So making sure that we have a good idea around IP is really important to us as a supercluster, but it's also really important to the overall program. Now, for the next slide, we're going to hand over membership to Jakob, who is going to tell you a little bit more about the Ocean Supercluster's membership.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm here to give you just a quick overview of the membership opportunity with the OSC. I'll talk about member benefits, when you're required to become a member with the OSC, as well as some of the financial contribution requirements. Now, before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm currently located within Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, which is also a part of the Wabanaki Confederacy. Just so everybody knows, we do have a Q&A option here. So you can find a little Q&A button on the right-hand side of your screen. Please feel free to drop in your questions, and we'll have some time at the end of this webinar to answer them. OSC, or Canada's Ocean Supercluster, is an industry-led and member-based organization. And what that means for us is that our work is guided by close to 600 diverse organizations across the country and internationally as well. In the call for proposal guidelines, you have seen mentions of the OSC membership requirements, and that is essential in order to be able to receive funding from the OSC down the line. Membership with the OSC is also a really great way to get connected with others in Canada and be part of the collective intelligence of the network. So should you become a member, and when should you become a member of the OSC? Now, Jennifer talked a little bit about this call process and this particular slide. I have layered on membership requirements on it. So currently, as it is, that's the red arrow there. You're not required to become an OSC member. You're free to submit your EOI without necessarily having membership with the OSC. Now, once your EOI is advanced to the next stage, you will have to become a member with the OSC before the full proposal development deadline. So this is really important, as your application would be disqualified if you have not submitted your membership application on the day of the deadline of the full proposal. If your project proposal submission is selected, each investing organization in your consortium that is making cash and in-kind contributions and seeking our matched funding must become an OSC member and must sign a project agreement. So that's really important to know. Now, you may ask, what are the types of the OSC membership? I'll now give you just a high-level overview of the two types of the OSC membership. Here on the left-hand side, you can see associate membership. That is the membership suited to non-private sector organizations. So if you're an academic organization, if you're a government organization, or if you're a nonprofit, that's the membership type for you. If you join, you get access to the OSC network. As I said, close to 600 organizations. You get access to our events. You receive member-only communication and get access to our member portal. There's no requirement to become a member at this stage again. However, we do recommend that. Become a member as soon as possible so you can get all of those benefits and you can start network with other members. Important to note, associate members are not eligible to receive matched funding from the OSC. Now, if you're a for-profit organization, you can join as an industry member. That's the class on the right-hand side here. Industry membership is really what enables the OSC to match your funds on a project. In other words, you won't be able to receive funding from the OSC if you don't become an industry member. Important to ask, membership with the OSC is free. You can join today and benefit from being part of the network. The OSC doesn't have any membership fees per se. Only when you have a project contracted with the OSC, industry members contribute a portion of their OSC investment to our cluster building activities. And that portion is 12.75% currently. And that's 12.75% of the OSC contribution to your project. Now, I know it might sound complicated, so in order to visualize that better, on the next slide, I'll show you a sample project layout and how that commitment would work. So here you can see a typical setup of an OSC-funded project. On the right-hand side here, you can see the companies in the consortium and their contributions to the project. On the left-hand side, you can see the OSC matched funds that are contributed based on the project agreement. Now, once the project is contracted, as Jennifer mentioned before, you'll be eligible to start submitting claims for reimbursements. So imagine you're a project participant A in this example. So in your case, 12.75% of the OSC contribution to your project will be deducted, and we will take it and reinvest it in cluster building activities. What are cluster building activities? We call these project innovation ecosystem projects. These projects benefit the whole blue economy in Canada and address key challenges that most of our members face. So they would include projects like Indigenous engagement programs. They would include helping to grow our startup ecosystem, building a robust talent pipeline in Canada, as well as equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives. These projects, by the way, can be found on our website, so you can see where that money goes to. And again, this contribution, the 12.75%, would be deducted from the OSC payout each quarter as you submit your claims. And so that's all for me. I hope the membership requirements are a bit clearer now. And again, if you don't have, while you don't have a requirement to join the OSC as a member here at the EOI level or at the EOI stage, we do encourage you to join nonetheless and start benefiting from the network. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Danielle, who will walk you through some of the financial details.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danielle Babstock. My pronouns are she and her, and I respectfully acknowledge the land on which I live, work, and rest as the ancestral homeland of the Beothuk, as well as the island of Uktahumguk as the unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I commit to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all. I'm going to talk to you today about the financial requirements of submitting an EOI to the OSC, and then what that means if your project moves along through the proposal phase and then into contracting. The OSC is a reimbursement program. So any funding that comes from us, you would have to incur the costs first up front, and then we would reimburse you on that. So financial support from the OSC is provided via matched contributions made against committed industry funds. The industry funds must be committed by the project participants for your project to be viable. So for this program specifically, the reimbursement rate from the OSC can be a maximum of 42.5%. So that means for every dollar that you spend, the OSC would reimburse you 42.5 cents. So upon your proposal approval and the signing of your letter of conditional award, the OSC will conduct financial due diligence on the project participants contributing 20% or more of the industry match funding. So that means we're going to be requesting that you demonstrate that you have the financial capacity to execute the project. So that means financial statements, for forecasted cash flow statements, and confirmation of funding if you're anticipating an equity raise or incurring debt to support your project. And we'll also request fair market value documentation for any of your in-kind contributions. So when your in-kind is budgeted, it must adhere to our cost eligibility guidelines. So it has to fit our criteria for what in-kind can be, and it should be valued at the market rate that you would, if it were equipment, the market rate that you would charge that equipment out at if you were to rent it to a client or something along those lines. Once you get into your project after contracting, some projects are eligible for quarterly advances of OSC funds. If you're interested in that model, you can ask us at that time of contracting what's required for that and whether or not your organization is eligible. And so you need to submit your claims quarterly. So as I said before, you have to spend the money first and then we'll reimburse you. And so submitting your claim is the reconciliation of your costs, and we would reimburse based on those costs and whether they adhere to our cost eligibility guidelines. So we would only reimburse funded eligible project costs. So you can refer to our guidelines as well to get an understanding of what that means. Our guidelines update not regularly, I would say probably yearly. So it's always good to make sure you're referring to the most recent version of the guidelines. We update them oftentimes for clarity to help our members understand what those guidelines mean. So only companies who have a role in the project can receive match funding and sign as project participants to the agreement. So you have to sign the agreement to be able to get OSC funds, and you have to be contributing cash of some sort to receive those funds. And so no more than 80% of the matched industry contributions, so cash or in kind, can come from one project participant. The remaining 20% must come from cash or in kind from one or more additional project participants. So that's the part where Jen mentioned that there must be at least 2 investing members. So 80% is the maximum that can come from one, but that 20% can come up from multiple members on the project. So this is what your EOI budget template is going to look like. So here you would break down the cash and in-kind being contributed by each participant and indicate the OSC funds that you expect to receive. And so you would list all of your participants on the left-hand side there, and then whether or not their funding is matched and what type of funding it is. You would also include any government funding that you anticipate receiving or any in-kind contributions from collaborators who may not be signing the agreement. They would be included as non-matched contributions to this project as well, but they would reflect the total budget value of your project. A note that isn't included on this slide, but matched in kind can only be 25% of the industry match funding. So any in kind that exceeds 25% would have to be considered non-matched. Next slide, please. So that's it from me. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Ralph, who will talk to you about our DEI policies.
Thanks, Danielle. Hola. Ulip Sibu Nindaluisi Ralph Eldridge, Nindalue Almastagweg, Ugadramguk. Hi everyone, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're coming from today. I'm Ralph Eldridge, OSC Indigenous Engagement Manager, joining you from my traditional Mi'kmaq territory on the west coast of Newfoundland. We want to take a few minutes to speak to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. The OSC strives to create a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment that supports the OSC and our associated projects as safe, creative spaces for innovation. Through our own operations and the development of our ecosystem, the OSC promotes DEI through meaningful collaborations and partnerships with Indigenous and underrepresented communities, and we encourage you to do the same in your projects. And for this call in particular, with its focus on climate solutions, we challenge you to consider how your project might benefit from including Indigenous partners and collaborators, as the effects of climate change are felt most acutely by First Nation peoples, Métis, and Inuit. And so, as Jen mentioned, put a lot of thought into how you build your project consortium. You'll see at the project proposal stage, we have prioritized 3 DEI outcomes. First, seeking a diverse consortium of project participants and collaborators contributes to the social and economic benefit of our underrepresented communities. The proposal template asks you to identify diverse participants and collaborators, which we define as an organization having a primary strategic focus on supporting diversity, or a company that is majority owned by a person or persons representing an Indigenous or underrepresented group. So the second outcome is strengthening the talent pipeline to foster career growth for underserved populations and underrecognized groups. And the third outcome of DEI in our project proposals speaks to the benefits that enhance Indigenous community capacity in business, employment, training, and education. So in addition to identifying the diverse project participants and collaborators, you'll also see a requirement to provide one of 2 things: a DEI policy, or in the absence of an existing policy, we ask that you develop a diversity statement that will be applied to the project. The DEI policy could already be in place in either the lead participants organization or in one of the other participants, and it would be utilized by the entire project team for the project. If a DEI policy is not available from the participants, we can also consider a project diversity statement that would highlight your diversity commitments for the project. So we ask that your statement address 3 things essentially: setting diversity workforce targets for historically underrepresented groups, providing respectful workplace policies that address issues such as bullying, harassment, violence, those sorts of things, and describing what diversity training or other initiatives that are in place or will be in place for the project team. So these DEI commitments will be tracked along with your other project KPIs, and it will be built into your project reporting. So you'll have to do that quarterly. We recognize that the project participants may be at different places in their DEI journey. So our goal is to position you for success and maximize opportunities for your project team. In that light, we've developed DEI tools and supports to help you meet your diversity targets and identified outcomes. And those will be made available to you starting with your kickoff meeting and throughout the duration of your project. So Wallen, thank you. Now I guess back over to Jen, who will field any of the questions that you may have on anything that you've heard today.
But please feel free to check out the Climate Solutions Program website, as well as flip any questions that you have to climate@oceansupercluster.ca. I do see a question that says, can an industry member use OSC funds to pay for services from a post-secondary institution? I get that you cannot match post-secondary institution funds, but can you use it to pay for those services, such as engineering costs? Yes, you can. So Danielle mentioned things around eligibility costs and our eligibility guidelines. We strongly recommend having a view of that. That should be on the website. You can see those in-kind costs and eligibility costs. If you are paying for some kind of program that is with an academic institution and it's like a service you're buying or you're procuring something from them, that would be considered an eligible cost. I will flag it needs to be a Canadian institution. They need to be for funds and services that were incurred in Canada. If they are foreign costs, that's a discussion we should actually have prior to make sure that you're making an informed decision. An example of something might be the MyTax program. So we strongly encourage you to explore having some students, co-op students or whomever, complete a term with you or support you with some of your program. Those would be considered eligible expenses. So if a unit of a MyTax student, a 4 to 6 month unit is $15,000, MyTax and the government of Canada pay for half, you would pay for half. Well, then your $7,500 is eligible as an in-kind or is eligible as an expense that you've paid, and 42.5% of that would be considered a reimbursable expense. So we welcome you to engage with academic institutions. Just know if somebody had an existing NSERC or some other grant, they can't bring that to the table and use that as a match. At the same time, you cannot bring forward something like an NRC IRAP program and use that as funds. You need to ensure that we're not stacking different programs on top of each other.
Thanks, Jen. I'd also add just about the MyTax piece. The institution has to incur the cost before you're eligible to claim it. So that's something to keep in mind as well before you engage in something like that, because oftentimes with those programs, the funds don't get released until the end of the unit of time. And so until that time, your cost is not considered a legitimate eligible reimbursable cost until the institution then spends that money. So just something to keep in mind, as it tends to be a hiccup for some of our members, but that it is an eligible cost and will eventually be able to be reimbursed.
Agreed. It comes down to cash flow a lot of the times. And sometimes, yes, if you have a student starting in June, you might end up paying an invoice for that in April. And so if that's not going to be fully incurred for 4 months after June, it's a while before it's eligible for reimbursement. I don't see any other questions. Does anyone else, in case I'm missing something? No. Your big piece is we are super interested in exploring ideas. So if you have ideas you want to bring forward and ask for introductions, Jakob mentioned, our membership base is massive. And so if there's organizations that you're interested in having an introduction to, because they might not necessarily just respond directly to you and you'd like us to introduce, if there's ideas that you're looking for from a support for introductions to academic institutions, we are happy to do that. And if there's just anything that you're interested in that maybe doesn't fit the definition of what these climate solution calls are, please feel free to reach out. Instead of climate at oceansupercluster.ca, we have technology at oceansupercluster.ca. And that is our other way to connect with us or reach out to our member email address. Anything that you find on our website, reach out and we'll make sure it gets to the right spot and we get back to you. Since there are no other questions, we thank you for joining us today. And thanks to everyone on the team for participating, doing a great job and sharing the story of what we're looking for and how we're looking to support you with the climate solutions call. So thank you and good luck on your EOI.